The desperate road dawn came cold and merciless across the prairie, revealing the full cost of the night's battle. Sarah stood at the window of the Thornton homestead, watching the eastern sky bleed pink and gold over the dark shapes that lay scattered in the yard. 3 bodies, 3 men who had come to kill her family, now stiffening in the morning frost. Behind her, her father's breathing had changed. Eleanor. The word came sharp from Martha Thornton's lips, his fevers rising. Sarah turned from the window to see her mother's face drain of color. Eleanor had been sitting beside James through the night, changing the bandages, checking for signs of infection. Now she pressed her hand to his forehead, and Sarah saw her shoulders stiffen. "How high?" Samuel asked, moving closer. "Too high." Eleanor's voice was steady, but her hands trembled as she pulled back the blanket to examine the wound. The stitches are holding, but there's inflammation around the edges, heat radiating from the site. James stirred, his eyes opening to narrow slits. "I'm fine," he mumbled. "Just need rest." "You need a doctor." Eleanor's tone left no room for argument. "Now. Not in a few hours. Now." Samuel exchanged a glance with Daniel. "I'll saddle the fastest horse. I can make Medicine Hat in 2 hours if I push hard." "And bring the doctor back in another 2 hours," Eleanor said. "That's 4 hours minimum. James doesn't have 4 hours to wait." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Sarah felt Daniel's hand find hers, squeezing tight. "Then what do you suggest?" Samuel asked quietly. Eleanor stood, her jaw set in that way Sarah recognized, the way she looked when she'd made a decision that couldn't be unmade. "We take him to Medicine Hat, in the wagon. The whole family goes." "Eleanor, the consortium's men are still out there," Martha protested. "The ones who fled. They could be waiting along the road. Then they'll have to kill us all." Eleanor's voice was flat, final. "Because I won't sit here and watch my husband die of infection when there's a doctor 12 miles away." Sarah saw the truth in her mother's eyes, the terrible calculation of risks. Stay and James dies for certain. Go and they might all die, but at least there was a chance. "I'll drive the wagon," Daniel said immediately. "Samuel and I can ride alongside as guards." "No." Eleanor shook her head. "Sarah and Thomas come with us. This family stays together. If the consortium wants us, they'll have to face all of us." Sarah felt something twist in her chest, pride and terror in equal measure. Her mother, who had always been the quiet strength behind her father's determination, was now giving orders that would put them all at risk. But she was right. They couldn't fragment anymore. They'd survived by standing together, and that was how they'd make this journey. "I'm coming too," Daniel said firmly. "Someone needs to ride scout ahead of the wagon." Eleanor looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. "Samuel stays here with Martha and the children. Someone needs to hold this position in case the consortium comes back, and someone needs to find Henry Blackburn and tell him what's happened." The plan came together quickly after that. Samuel helped Daniel hitch the gentlest horse to the Thorntons' wagon, while Eleanor and Martha prepared James for transport. They packed blankets to cushion him, water for the fever, clean bandages, and Eleanor's dwindling supply of carbolic acid. Thomas clung to Sarah's skirt, his face pale and frightened. "Papa's going to be all right," Sarah told him, though the words felt hollow. "The doctor will fix him." "What if the bad men come back?" Thomas whispered. Sarah knelt down to his level, taking his small shoulders in her hands. "Then Mama and I will protect him. And you. That's what we do, Thomas. We protect each other." She kissed his forehead and felt him nod against her. They carried James out as the sun cleared the horizon, laying him as gently as possible in the wagon bed. He groaned at the movement, his face slick with sweat despite the morning chill. Eleanor climbed in beside him, arranging the blankets and checking his pulse with practiced fingers. "It's faster than I'd like," she murmured, "but not dangerously so. Not yet." Sarah helped Thomas into the wagon, then climbed up to sit on the bench beside Daniel. He had his rifle across his knees, his face set in grim determination. Samuel handed Sarah her own rifle, then passed up a shotgun for Eleanor. "Keep your eyes on the horizon," Samuel told Daniel. "Any riders, any movement, you signal and we reassess. Don't try to be a hero." "I won't let anything happen to them," Daniel promised. Samuel's hand gripped his son's shoulder for a moment. "I know you won't. God go with you." Daniel clicked to the horse, and the wagon lurched into motion. Sarah looked back once to see Martha and Samuel standing in the yard, Martha's arm around Emma, all of them watching. Then the homestead fell behind, and there was only the road ahead, 12 miles of open prairie, coulees, and creek crossings where ambush could hide. The morning sun climbed higher as they traveled, warming the air, but doing nothing to ease the tension that gripped Sarah's shoulders. Daniel kept the horse at a steady trot, fast enough to make time, but not so fast that the wagon's jolting would worsen James's condition. Every few minutes, Sarah glanced back to see her mother checking the bandages, wiping James's forehead, murmuring words Sarah couldn't hear. Thomas sat silent and wide-eyed, clutching his mother's arm. They were perhaps 5 miles from the Thornton homestead when Daniel suddenly pulled back on the reins. "What is it?" Sarah asked, her hand going to her rifle. "Riders." Daniel pointed to a low rise ahead. 3 of them just came over the ridge. Sarah's heart kicked into a gallop. She squinted against the sun and saw them, 3 men on horseback, spreading out to block the road, not riding toward them with speed, but positioning themselves deliberately, waiting. "Eleanor," Daniel called back, "we have company. I see them." Eleanor's voice was tight. "How far to the creek crossing?" "1/4 mile, but they're between us and it." "Then we go through them." Sarah stared at her mother. "Mama, we don't stop. We don't turn around. We go through them." Eleanor had the shotgun in her hands now, checking the loads with steady fingers. "They want to rob us or kill us, they'll have to do it with us fighting every step." Daniel met Sarah's eyes, and she saw the same question in his face that was in her heart. Could they do this? Could they fight their way past 3 armed men while protecting a wounded man and a child? But Eleanor was right. Turning back meant James died, and stopping meant they were sitting targets. "Keep moving," Sarah said quietly. "Steady pace. Make them think we're not afraid." Daniel clicked to the horse, and the wagon rolled forward. Sarah raised her rifle, resting it across her knees in plain view. A warning. A promise. The 3 riders didn't move as the wagon approached. Sarah could see them more clearly now, rough men in worn clothing, faces shadowed by hat brims. Not the consortium's hired guns. Something else. Opportunists, maybe. Men who'd heard about the battle and come looking for easy pickings. One of them, a lean man with a gray beard, raised his hand as the wagon came within 50 yards. "That's far enough," he called out. "You folks look like you're in a hurry. Maybe carrying something valuable?" "We're carrying a wounded man to a doctor," Eleanor said, her voice ringing clear across the distance. "Move aside." The gray-bearded man laughed. "Now that's not very neighborly. Way I see it, you got yourselves a wagon, some horses, and probably some supplies worth sharing." "Times are hard for everyone, ma'am. I said move aside." Eleanor stood up in the wagon bed, the shotgun rising to her shoulder. "Or I'll move you." Sarah felt her breath catch. Her mother, quiet, careful Eleanor, standing with a shotgun trained on 3 armed men. Thomas had his face buried in the blankets, his small body shaking. The gray-bearded man's smile faded. "That's not wise, ma'am. 3 of us, 3 of you, and 1 of yours is already shot up. Math doesn't favor you." "Math doesn't account for desperation," Eleanor said. "And I'm a desperate woman. My husband is dying, my children are in danger, and you're in my way. Now move." Something in her voice, some edge of absolute conviction, made the gray-bearded man hesitate. His companions shifted in their saddles, suddenly uncertain. Then from the wagon bed, James spoke. "Sarah." His voice was weak but clear. "Give me your rifle." "Papa, you can't. Now." Sarah twisted in her seat and passed the rifle back. James struggled to sit up, Eleanor trying to hold him down, but he pushed her hands away with surprising strength. He braced the rifle against the wagon's side, the barrel swaying slightly but finding its target. "I killed 2 men last night," James said, his words carrying to the robbers. 2 men who came to murder my family. You think I'll hesitate to kill 3 more? The gray-bearded man's eyes narrowed. "You're bluffing. Man in your condition can't even hold that rifle steady. Try me." The words were simple, flat, and absolutely sincere. For a long moment, nobody moved. Sarah could hear the wind rustling the prairie grass, the horses breathing, Thomas's muffled sobs. Her hand found Daniel's on the bench between them, their fingers lacing together. Then the gray-bearded man cursed and yanked his horse's head to the side. "Not worth it," he muttered. "Come on." The 3 riders moved off the road. giving the wagon space to pass. Daniel didn't hesitate. He snapped the reins and the horse surged forward. Sarah kept her eyes on the robbers as they rolled past, watching for any sudden movement, any reaching for weapons. But the men just sat their horses and watched them go. They were 100 yards past when James made a soft sound and the rifle clattered to the wagon bed. "James!" Eleanor caught him as he slumped sideways. "James, stay with me!" Sarah twisted around to see her father's eyes rolling back, his body going limp in Eleanor's arms. The bandages on his side were stained dark red. The exertion had torn something loose. "Drive faster!" Eleanor's voice cracked with panic. "Daniel! Faster!" Daniel whipped the reins and the horse broke into a gallop. The wagon bounced and jolted over the rough road, Sarah gripping the bench with both hands to keep from being thrown off. Behind her, Eleanor was pressing fresh bandages to James's side, her lips moving in what might have been prayer or might have been curses. Thomas was crying openly now, his small hands clutching his father's coat. The miles blurred past. Creek crossing, prairie, coulee, more prairie. The sun climbed toward noon. James didn't wake. His breathing grew shallow, his face gray as ash. "How much farther?" Eleanor demanded. 3 miles, Daniel called back. "Maybe less." "He's not going to make it. Daniel, he's not." "Yes, he is." Daniel's voice was fierce. "He's going to make it because he has to. Hold on, Mr. Mackenzie, hold on." Sarah found herself praying, words she hadn't spoken since childhood, tumbling from her lips in desperate whispers. "Please, please. Not like this. Not after everything." Then Medicine Hat appeared on the horizon, a cluster of buildings, smoke rising from chimneys, the promise of help. The wagon thundered down the main street, people scattering and staring. Daniel pulled up in front of a building with a painted sign, "Dr. Harrison, physician and surgeon." "Get him!" Eleanor was already climbing down. "Someone get the doctor!" Daniel leaped from the bench and ran to the door, pounding with his fist. "Dr. Harrison! Emergency!" The door opened to reveal a middle-aged man with graying hair and sharp eyes. He took one look at the wagon and moved with swift efficiency. "Inside now, you," he pointed at Daniel. "Help me carry him." Gently. They lifted James from the wagon, his head lolling, his breathing barely perceptible. Eleanor and Sarah followed them into the surgery, Thomas clinging to Sarah's hand. The doctor directed them to lay James on a table, then immediately began cutting away the bandages. "Gunshot wound," he said, his hands moving with practiced speed. "When?" "Last night," Eleanor said. "I cleaned and stitched it, but infection set in. Fever started at dawn." "You did good work." The doctor was examining the wound, pressing gently around the edges. "But the bullet went deep. There may be fragments. I'll need to operate. You all need to wait outside." "I'm staying," Eleanor said. "Ma'am, I'm staying." Eleanor's voice left no room for argument. "I've seen blood before. I won't faint. And if my husband dies, I'll be here when it happens." The doctor looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. "Fair enough, but the children go. And you," he looked at Sarah, "take that boy somewhere quiet. This is going to take a while." Sarah wanted to protest, wanted to stay, but Thomas was shaking so hard his teeth chattered. She nodded and led him outside, Daniel following. They stood in the dusty street, the wagon horse breathing hard, people gathering to whisper and stare. "Is he gonna die?" Thomas asked, his voice small and broken. Sarah knelt down and pulled him into her arms, holding him tight. "I don't know," she whispered into his hair. "I don't know, Thomas, but Mama's with him, and the doctor will do everything he can." Daniel's hand settled on her shoulder, warm and steady. "He's strong," he said quietly. "He stood up and faced down those robbers when he could barely breathe. That kind of man doesn't give up easy." Sarah wanted to believe him. Wanted to believe that strength and will were enough to overcome infection and blood loss and the brutal arithmetic of prairie medicine. But as the sun climbed higher and the hours stretched out, she could only sit on the surgery steps with Thomas in her lap and Daniel beside her, waiting for the door to open. Waiting to learn if they'd made it in time, or if the desperate road had taken one more thing from them.